Hey guys, welcome to Brad's Crazy Life. In this video, we're going to go over the different types of officers that you're going to encounter in training and as being certified. What we're going to go over is the different ones, different personalities that I dealt with, and actually how they help you evolve and train and become the officer that you end up. First things first, number one officer is the lazy officer. This is the officer that is going to have you do most of the work, is going to make you go out and do count by yourself, even though you're not supposed to. This is the officer that's going to come in, he's going to help you count, and then he's going to go in the officer station, he's going to kick back up in the chair, and he's going to go to sleep all the way up until 6 o'clock in the morning, or until the next count, and then he's going to send you out there to count again. And this happened to me in training and as a C.O. It didn't happen often, but sometimes you get lazy officers. So that's the type of officer you want to try to avoid. He's going to sleep till 6 o'clock in the morning, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, he's going to wake up, he's going to feel refreshed, and then he's going to walk outside like he's been doing work all night, get in his car, leave and go home and do it the next night. Basically, because I work night shift, he's the one that is up all day, and then at the prison when the inmates go to sleep, he's asleep too. He's not looking out. He's not doing anything. The second officer, in my opinion, is probably the worst officer to have. He'll teach you some things, but it's the officer that's by the book. Now, the reason that it might be scary by the book, and you will not find this out when you're in training, you'll find this out when you actually have a badge and you're certified, is that by the book officer is the one the inmates hate the most. So anytime that you're around this officer, the inmates are always scared, or they might act different around this particular officer than they would if they were around just you, because of the way that I portrayed myself. I was more laid back, and when I went into a pod, I had a conversation with these inmates every day. I did not make them my friend, but at the same time, I tried to get mutual respect between the inmate and me. And anybody that I had that was in my T building at the time, when I told them I was leaving, they almost wanted to cry, because I had mutual respect for them, and they had mutual respect for me, because I had to do my job and then they had to do theirs, and we learned to coexist, because you have to have that. If you're by the book all the time and you don't have leeway, them inmates are not going to respect you, in my opinion. Now, the third type of officer, this is the officer you're going to learn the most from, because it's either your old heads or your old timers, the ones that's been there for 20, 25 years, and they remain sergeants. They've probably been captains before, and they've demoted to become back to sergeants, because they didn't like being a captain. They didn't like the responsibility. So you have your old timers that they're gonna be the ones that you're gonna learn from the most. I had two old timers while I was there. One was been there for 19 years. The other one's been there for 15 years, and I learned the most from them guys. You know, we sit and talk for hours and hours and hours about how you act around inmates, how you're supposed to talk around staff, how you're supposed to conduct yourself, how you're supposed to make your rounds, and they're the ones that you're going to learn from and teach from, and they're the ones that's going to give you the best advice on how to actually go around the prison. Now, the next kind of officer is what I call the hard ass. And that's the officer that probably was bullied in school, and he's been bullied for 4 years in high school. He gets out and he becomes a correctional officer, and now he gets to take it out on the inmates like they were the ones that actually bullied him in high school. That is not an officer you want to be around whatsoever. I would never be around that type of guy. These guys always are... They talk down to people. They're the type of people that when you walk into a room, the inmates just disrespect immediately. They're worse than a by the book. because they tell that this officer, if something went down, would run the other way he's pretty much be on the weaker side of the inmates. They know that if there was a fight to break out, he'd probably tell them run and call for help instead of actually defending another officer. That the hard ass is not one that you want to be around. Now, there's an officer that I call the deadbeat officer. Just like if you're a deadbeat dad and you ain't never around, this is this type of officer. The last officer that I had while I was at the prison I was working from, the last sergeant, literally he would come in, put his stuff down at 6 o'clock when he arrived. I would see him at 8 o'clock for count, and then I'd see him back again at 5 o'clock in the morning to get his stuff to go home. The rest of the time, he was either at the captain's office or he was running around the prison making himself look like he was doing something, and in reality he probably wasn't doing anything. Maybe serving a DR or two, which is a disciplinary report on an inmate, but other than that, would never go and shower in confinement, would never do the things that you had to do. And I am going to make a video on confinement and the things that I had to do in there, because I did work in confinement for a little while, and also had to shower and do rounds in confinement while I was there. Now, the last officer that I'm going to go over is probably the one that's the most touchy subject. It's your female officer. You have to act differently around a female officer than you would probably any other officer that I described. Because any other officer described, you could talk to, probably cut up with, but the female officer, that's not going to happen. Most of the time, they're straight to the point, you know. And the thing about female officers in a male prison is they can't do searches. They're not going to be going in confinement. They're not going to be doing showers. They're not going to be in confinement at all. And if they're in confinement, they have to be announced, hey, there's a female on deck, or there's a female coming in the pod, so that the inmates are dressed. So they get a little bit of special treatment as far as what you have to do in a male-dominated prison. Most of the time, they're just on the radio. Most of the time, they're at like specialty positions, like they're in medical during the day, or they're at center gate. When the inmates come through, they're checking name badges and stuff like that. Most of the time, they're not going to be put in harm's way, ever. And most of the time, they're the ones that during training, they're not going to get the training that a male officer will, because the male officer is going to have to do most of the things in a male-dominated prison. Most of the females are probably going to be stuck in a dorm for the first 2 years, and they're not going to get any training whatsoever. They're not going to be able to go on special teams, dart team, and that sort of thing. They're pretty much just there to keep watch. That's it. We had a female that was in confinement, but she was in confinement. All she was there for is just to push buttons. Females have their specific roles in a prison. Most of your admin positions are females. So you have to get along with that female officer just like you have to get along with a male officer, but it's in a different way. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? You can like, share, and comment this on this video. Anything you want to put down, any questions for me? This is Brad's Crazy Life. Over and out.